Hey guys, we need your help. We've noticed not all of you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, so subscribe today.
Subscribe, hit that button.
Let's just call the next
Right.
tier contenders. So for me, it's New England and the Rams. We kind of outlined both reasons why. I also have Seattle in there. The fact that Seattle could fumble the or could, excuse me, have that many interceptions in a game, 4 by Sam Darnold, and still be in a position where, you know, at the end of the game, it wasn't in hand. It wasn't like, they were getting routed. Anyways, that's interesting. Detroit, who I do have winning the division. I know right now they're technically not in the playoff picture. The Colts, I have Buffalo in there. Tampa and Baltimore are my contenders. So the one I want to point out there, the one that I think that is a little interesting to me is what happens. So Buffalo plays Houston this Thursday, and that game is really it's a little fascinating because right now the Bills would be the 5 seed. So I have them being a wild card. But right now I have them playing the Ravens. If the Bills
Mm,
manage to lose this game, they're favored in this matchup. If they lose this game, their more likely opponent would be the forecast 3 seed, which is to me the Colts. That I don't know. Do I want to play the Ravens again this time in Baltimore? I don't really know if I do. Not this version of the do I want so is this game on Thursday? It's just it's fascinating because the Texans are on the outside looking in right now. They're the 8 seed. They have a better conference record than the Chiefs. So to me, of my contenders, some could get feisty, and the placement of who matches up with who matters a ton. I mean, I know you can't. It's week 12, so we can't be too
right.
crazy, but it's going to matter a lot.
Yeah, the matchups do matter, right? And you gotta be able to match up with any team, and it could be different. You gotta be able to play in the cold. You gotta be able to defend a passing type team. You gotta be able to defend a running type team. That's why the NFL playoffs are so crazy. They're all game sevens, right? You just gotta win that one game. Your team's gotta be able to play different ways to win that game. And you gotta be really good at what you're good at, and your weakness can't be too bad, if that makes sense, because in a bad matchup, it gets exposed. So the way I took contenders was like, who has played well enough to have a shot to win the Super Bowl this year? I think you have a couple more teams than me as your contenders because you're looking, at winning a division and all that stuff. I just kinda took it as like, look, these are teams that played well enough to talk about contending to win a Super Bowl this year, and who knows what can happen. But I kinda have your teams in there as, flipping your favorites and all that stuff, Denver and Philly, obvious. I think we all know that we talked about them enough. They're great teams. They're definitely 2 contenders. My next tier is, Detroit and Buffalo. The NFC, Detroit, and then Buffalo. And it's just because I really feel as if, Josh Allen is the best player in football. I've there might be other people that win MVP, but, I mean, I think he's the best player in football.
6
And
touchdowns,
yeah,
no big
so
deal.
there's always Josh Allen, right? Like,
Right.
that isn't going anywhere, and they know how to score points when they have to score points. He knows how to come back and make a play. He knows how to use his legs. He knows how to use his arm. I mean, it's Josh Allen, right? And then the defense is just we're just hoping and chugging, right? Chugging along. But I honestly, it's the MVP effect of Josh Allen, just the best player in the league, and Buffalo. Detroit is a team who's been there. They have players who have been there. They have an identity. They can run the ball, right? The play action game. And then defensively, with Aiden Hutchinson this year, right? They didn't have him last year. Aiden Hutchinson back this year, trying to get all these safeties healthy and on the field and all that stuff. The linebackers they had, they played Philly really well defensively, right? So I think this is a serious contender in Detroit, obviously. So I have Philly, Denver, who you have as favorites. I have Buffalo and Detroit, right? And then the next team is just Indy. And just because they've been so good this year on both sides of the ball, obviously, I think they have the MVP in Jonathan Taylor. Daniel Jones has played really well consistently throughout this year. And they have a huge test coming up with Kansas City this week, right? And that's really going to show us again we're always looking for the legitimacy factor of the Colts, but you can't say they haven't played great, and there's a chance for them to have the number 1 seed, and it comes through Indy and whatnot. So those are just my 5 contenders. There's gonna be a lot more teams in the mix, and if this happens, that happens in matchups, but those are the 5 teams that I think have played consistent. They have great records. They've had really good offenses or really good defensives, and they've played to earn the right to be contenders at this point.
So, did it concern you at all? I'm gonna ask as a fan for a second, and then I'll give you my mouth on this. Uh, Jared Goff could not throw the ball downfield. Was that because the Eagles' defense was so smothering? Was it because he just had an off game, which happens? I mean, typically Jared Goff is very accurate. That's one of the things that has always been a when he's on, right? And was it just off, or was it Quinion Mitchell just being really good, or like what happened from your point of view in that game, and should we be concerned? Because some people, not me, but some people are like to point out that he plays a lot differently inside versus outside. And I'd put more caveats on it than that. I think wind matters. I think temperature matters. Not just like any old outside is not the
Yeah.
same as as subs, cold and windy is a little different than just outside.
Well, I know wind for quarterbacks plays a factor. Like wind and rain play more of a factor than snow or just cold. Like that wind is real. When I saw the pregame, how field goals were whipping around, that definitely changes a lot, especially from a team that doesn't practice in it, right? In New England, our weather was horrendous. And we had an indoor and I never saw it. Bill was like, "We're not practicing in that thing. The bad weather's our advantage. Cold weather's our advantage. Windy days in Foxborough are our advantage. Snow is our advantage. Rain's our advantage." So we practice in everything. Tom Brady could throw the ball in anything because that's all we practice in. And I doubt they're practicing outside in Detroit a lot when they have an indoor. So they're probably indoor all the time. And then when you have crazy windy weather, that can affect pass catchers and throwing the ball. Now, Detroit is also built to run the ball, which is why I like Detroit, right? And they need to focus on that. I think it was a combination of the weather. I think he had a bad game. I think he had 2 gloves on. Never good when your quarterback's throwing with 2 gloves. I never like no shout out to Teddy Bridgewater. He's the only one allowed to do it. Everyone else, Teddy 2 gloves, he's been doing that since college. Everyone else, don't put on 2 gloves to me. That's a good day as a DB if the quarterback got 2 gloves on. But I just felt like also the Eagles are really finding their stride defensively. And that's how Vic Fangio operates. They get better as the season goes on. And I really think they're starting to find their stride, especially with the new pass rushers they have in there. Brandon Graham came back. They got the guy from Miami to come
Jalen
over.
Phillips.
Right.
Mhm.
So I just think like that's a top defense. And just because the defense has a good day don't mean the quarterback's also awful. I think, it's a little bit of both happening.
Yeah, I mean, when you look to see kind of the advanced metrics on Jared Goff throwing in this game, it's like since he entered the league, one of the lowest like EPA, downfield, anything downfield just wasn't working. But that happened last year against the Texans. So there's always some, and that was inside. So sometimes this stuff happens. I'm not to say I'm not worried because I'm a Lions fan. So like of course I'm worried. I've lived through some lean years, but I think as the analyst in me is like, all right, this is, there Panay Sewell was out for a couple of snaps. Like there were some things there going on that are abnormal. Like let's see how they do, Thanksgiving against, the Packers. Let's see. That's more of like a true test of who they are for me than perhaps this past game or even against the Giants this week coming up. So, I mean, I don't know. So my other question for you on Indy. All right, so we get sauce. Okay. Well, we get to see them get sauce, right? But now they're missing DeForest Buckner. So how does that sort of net out? Because I know you have a week to handle it, but that's a big loss. DeForest Buckner was having a hell of a year. We saw against the Falcons, Tyler Algier basically ran right to the vacated DeForest Buckner spot to score some touchdowns. How does a team handle that? Because that's like two pretty big, one plus change, one minus change, like all
Right.
at once.
Well, I think Indy loved their front seven, and they were like, "Hey, we're a lockdown corner away from being able to play man to man, right? And win with our front and do exotic things." Because when you have a good 4-man pass rush, you can play man to man. You can do a lot of different stuff with that linebacker and that safety. Like you could do a lot of different, you could spy the quarterback, you can change coverage, right? If you could do a 4-man rush and play zone, which you maybe don't have as strong a man-to-man corners, you can
Right.
still do some stuff if your rush gets after it, but you can never really lock up in critical situations. I think that's what Indy wanted to do. Now when you lose DeForest Buckner, he's like a he's like a game wrecker. He's like a guy that your defense is somewhat built around.
Yep.
That might make Zaire Franklin's job a little harder from play to play because he keeps them clean. Like, I compare it to, like, Vita Vea in Tampa's defense. Like, it's not just about Vita's production, it's what he allows Levante David to do behind him, right? He occupies blockers so Levante is clean to then be Levante David. That makes sense. So,
Yep.
that is what these great D tackles and 5 techniques and these end tackle hybrids, they keep the linebackers clean. And Zaire Franklin leads the NFL in tackles every year. Great D tackles in front of him, you know? So that's what Vince Wilfork used to do for the Patriots. It allowed Gerard Mayo and Hightower and Jamie Collins to have great seasons because the front's so good in front of them as well. So it could be a little bit of a domino effect. You now with Sauce and this loaded up secondary, now you just run the ball. Like, all right, I'll
Yep.
take the corner out the game by running the ball, getting it to 3rd and 3. You get a man-to-man. We run a pick route. Doesn't matter how good you are when you get picked. So it's like it kind of takes away from how you want to play a little bit. So you got to kind of just see. You got to that's where your subs and your reserves are for. But it could change some things with the Colts. Like Bill Belichick used to say, the backup's never as good as the starter. He would have been starting. So it's going to have an effect. It just you
I
don't know
love
how drastic.
Phil-isms that are like that. The backup's
Yeah,
never
he's
good
like,
as
if
the
the back,
starter.
he's like, look, when we lose a key player, like how the next man up, but the next man ain't always the starter, or he would have been starting. So there is some, there's going to be a little cracks. Now, how much cracks before the whole dam breaks? I don't know, but we'll see how much cracks and how much leakage they have now.
I love it. So you did not mention the Bucks and you did not mention Seattle. Are they in your next tier? So we're moving on to the next tier, which would be our hope to be in the mix tier. So we had our favorites, we had our contenders, and the hope to be in the mix tier. Just so everyone has mine, it's Green Bay, Kansas City, Houston, the Chargers, and Pittsburgh. Chargers and Pittsburgh, I have teetering on long shots or hope to be in the mix, but because of their previous schedule, they went to hope to be in the mix. But is Seattle and Tampa, are they in your hope to be in the mix?
They're in the mix. And the way I look at the mix, they are in there. And the way I looked at it is, I don't know mathematically which team's getting in and what team, but if they get in, these teams are capable of winning a game, if
Yep.
that makes sense. They
Yep.
have flaws and they might not be contenders, but if they get in, they can mess some things up for some people. Okay. And my in the mix, mess some things up teams are Kansas City, because they're still Kansas City and they still got Mahomes. They go on the road and they could beat they can go on the road and might be favored at New England. Who knows? They can go on the road and be favored at Indy. I think Kansas City's favored at Indy this week. So that's a team. I'm not never putting 15 out of there. Baltimore, for the same reasons, Lamar Jackson, right? I have Tampa Bay for the same reasons of Baker Mayfield and a Todd Bowles defense. They can go on the road and upset some teams. Now, they have lost a couple. They've definitely lost their mojo. The injuries are catching up to them. I cannot just say that Tampa's contenders. And I played for the Bucks, but they are still capable. They're in the mix for me. Seattle, right? They got great defense. We all love that. Sam Darnold had a 4-pick, 3-pick night or whatever it was. I've seen that side of Sam Darnold come out now a couple times, right? Last year and then this year. That's why I don't have them as contenders. But, they're in the mix. Chicago, I got them in the mix. Got them. They're finding ways to win. Okay. Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, my guy Kevin Byard, one of my favorite teammates ever, one of my best friends in the league. All he does is catch picks. Okay. He's still doing it. So they can turn the ball over on defense, and they got this Ben Johnson effect. What's their record, by the way?
They're in pole position in the North. I believe
Are
they
they
have one
7
more
and
win.
3?
7-3. I just didn't know if they
I
had
mean,
their bye yet or not. 7-3.
7-3. Chicago Bears.
Yep.
I don't know if we're talking about that enough. Okay. And then in their division, Green Bay. I'm kind of mixed on Green Bay, man. I know the pieces they have. I love Jeff Halfley, Michael Parsons on defense. They clearly could beat some Josh Jacobs. They could clearly beat some people in the playoffs. They're in the mix. But I'm just not sold on them being contenders. I don't know. Jordan Love, I don't know. I don't feel great about the Packers, but clearly if they beat somebody in the playoffs, I don't think we'll be shocked. And then San Francisco, just because of the coaching, just because of Brock Purdy came back. He's still good at football. George Kittle is back. He's still good at football. Obviously, they played the Cardinals. They got to become consistent. But San Francisco can go if they get in the playoffs. They can go on the road and beat a Philly. They can go on the road and beat, um, Detroit. So it's just like all these teams are in the mix, in my opinion, have flaws, but I'm not going to sit here and be shocked if any of those teams go in the playoffs and win a playoff game.
Okay, so I know you talked about Jonathan Taylor as your MVP, but my pick for sneaky offensive player of the year would actually be Christian McCaffrey because what he's doing is he kept this team alive. Like they're going to make the playoffs, and not because of anything other than McCaffrey had conservatively 1 billion touches. He's like the first player to have missed at least 10 games in a season, and then the next game come back and play it even so I don't know the lowest number, but this number of touches is just absolutely ridiculous. So I don't know if he's getting enough shine for being able to, I don't know, at least offensive player of the year. Like, you're not gonna get as a running back is just highly unlikely to get MVP just because that's not how we've given away the award for so not to say it's not right, but I'm just saying the likelihood is low. But I don't know. He's not giving enough like at least offensive player of the year shine. But my problem, my not problem, but my concern about, San Francisco is that I don't know they're not getting any healthier. Like I don't know when these like you're not getting Fred Warner like Nick done, Fred done. Like
Yeah.
it's just some of these players who in the playoffs you absolutely need. I just don't know if they're not if the backup, were as good as the starter, they wouldn't be the backup? So
Right.
that's
They have an easy schedule, right, this year. So they have a tough division and an easy schedule. So you're talking about having enough competition, like what the
right.
Patriots don't have. They get that with Seattle and the Rams. Then they have a light schedule otherwise. So if they get in, they've also had a lot of time to play without Fred and Nick, and they've had time for those backups to get a little better because they've played a lot without them. Like, they haven't had these guys all year, it's essentially gonna look like, right? So, it's not like they played all year, then lost them. They lost them early. So, if they end up making the playoffs and going on a little bit of a run here late, it's like, hey, maybe they get hot and Purdy's finally healthy and Christian is you got Christian and Kittle on offense, and then defensively with Salah, whatever, hey, you gotta go on the road and upset somebody. Can the Niners go on the road and beat the Eagles? I think some people might not be surprised by that if that were to happen or saying that's not can they beat Seattle? I think some people will pick the Niners to beat Seattle. So, it's just like that's why they're in the mix for me.
Yeah, no, I get it. My only problem is I would like to see them be a little more consistent with at least getting a little more pass rush because it's just really hard to win in the playoffs if you can't get after a quarterback.